In an attempt to prove to the world that I wasn't a Nintendo fanboy, I made a video nitpicking 7 weaknesses of the Nintendo Switch. And after becoming an international viral sensation, as every video this channel's ever produced naturally does, world peace went straight out the window due to the controversial nature of a negative Nintendo Switch video. And now my home country of the United States is under a lot of pressure to hand me over to the North Korean government, who apparently happen to be huge fans of the Nintendo Switch, as they revealed in a recent press release demanding my ass on a platter. So now I'm hiding in an undisclosed location editing this video as a last-ditch effort to restore world peace and integrity to my honorable good name. Well, alright, fine. Anybody who's been watching this channel for a while is well aware that I've never had any honor to begin with. But my videos have saved the world many times over in the past, and I plan to do it again here today. And since we're an ass hair away from World War III, I'd better not waste any more time redeeming myself and jump right into the 8 strengths of the Nintendo Switch. But before I prevent nuclear winter, why not press that subscribe button if you're new to the channel? It'd be awfully kind if you did. Anyway, let's begin! Number 8. You can change the settings to where you don't have to enter your password to visit the eShop. In the last video I complained about having to enter your password every time you visit the eShop, but little did I know you could change that in the settings. And everybody was quick to call my fat ass out for the botch in the comments. But to quote Wayne Campbell,
I was not aware of that.
I'd have re-uploaded the video and denied up and down that it ever happened, but at the very least, my error can raise awareness for other victims who've been having to enter their passwords in just to browse the eShop. So if you think about it, I'm kind of a martyr, and martyrs deserve to be honored. Number 7. The cartridges. While I do stand by cartridges' expensive cost for larger storage being the biggest weakness of the Nintendo Switch, everything else about them's freaking awesome. They don't scratch, they taste wonderful, they're more official and collectible, and best of all, they're easy to hide from bad guys. I constantly find myself wanting to buy more because there's just something that feels good about owning cartridges. And I know there's gonna be a few jabronis in the comments telling me they're technically game cards, but I'm calling them cartridges regardless cause it's just more nostalgic and fun. But even setting nostalgia aside, cartridges are definitely better than discs, minus the storage issues. So make it cheaper for publishers to buy bigger cartridges, Nintendo, or I'm gonna punch you right in the butt. Number 6. Plenty of color variety. One of my favorite things about the 64 and GameCube were the color options you had for the consoles and controllers. The Wii was supposed to have more color options available from the start, but for some reason we didn't get that till way after people forgot the Wii was still a thing. The Wii U had 2 color options available at launch, but one was an inferior model, and they were both boring colors anyway. But finally with the Switch, Nintendo added a little more flavor to the aesthetic. Nintendo's never stopped having color variations for their portables, most likely because portables are more personal. But damn it, why can't consoles be as well? Either way, it doesn't matter because the Switch is still considered a portable anyway. Right now the Joy-Con options are somewhat limited and the tablet only comes in one boring color. However, I'll cut it a little slack since it's still relatively new and keep my Peter crossed that some of these badass fan-made colorways become a thing. For now though, Nintendo's doing a good job at giving us the option of how we want our consoles to look. Number 5. All of the controllers. How do I put this? There's a shit ton of different ways to play games on the Switch, and there's not even one controller setup that I truly dislike. In my last video about the Switch's weaknesses, I talk about how you pretty much need a Pro Controller, and while I do stand by the fact that if you want to play games the standard way, then it's still your best option and pretty much a must-have, I still appreciate the fact that you have the option to play games the standard way, the Wii way with motion controllers if you use the Joy-Cons that don't need recalibrating every 3 seconds, if you use the pointer, touch controls if you're playing with the tablet, or even using the Joy-Cons as a standard controller for games simple enough to allow it. I always thought it was a little underrated about the Switch that you can take the Joy-Con pieces apart to use as 2 controllers. Although it does suck when you have to use half a Joy-Con and give your dad's friend Terry the Pro Controller because you don't want to be a dick. Even so, it's still better than nothing and a very convenient option. Not to mention you can use some surprisingly good and cheap third-party controllers. And I must say that every controller I've used thus far all hold excellent charges for how advanced they really are, what with the motion controls, Amiibo scanner, and HD rumble. I can go days without charging, and when the battery does finally start running low, I only need to plug it up for like 10 minutes and I'm able to play until it's time to mow the lawn. Plus the detail to the HD rumble makes me metaphorically pee wipe mud all over the place. It might be considered a gimmick, but this is a gimmick that genuinely adds another layer to certain games and makes everything more fun without interfering or feeling forced. I mean, HD rumble just feels so cool in your hands. And my buddy Carl told me they feel wonderful in your app. Number 4. Soul. The Switch has so many great games and a wide variety of them. This one's almost a negative due to all the time and money it's been squeezing out of my stupid ass. In fact, I just had to put my dad up for adoption so I could afford Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Ever since the 64, people have mostly been buying Nintendo consoles for certain types of games made by N-Dog themselves. There's plenty of people who love those kinds of games, myself included, but almost nobody who only wants those types of games. However, the Switch has had more games in its first year than people with shit to do can realistically even keep up with. And again, not just with the quality of how good the games are, but with the variety of different genres as well. Nintendo obviously has good stuff to deliver on their end, and there's a pretty good handful of bigger third-party third-party games as well, with plenty more surely on the way. But one thing I admittedly thought was overrated at first that really won me over has been the indie games. Before the Switch came out, everybody's been hyping indie games up out the ass. And while I've always loved indie games, my initial reaction was, well, that's great, but you can play those games on cell phones, so of course the Switch is gonna have them too. Every device that can play video games that's ever been invented has indie support. But I've gotta say, independent games have been consuming a lot more of my time than I initially thought they would. And it's great that so many of them are getting physical copies. Probably thanks to the fact that smaller Switch cartridges are actually cheaper than Xbox One and PS4 discs. At least that's what Reggie-san told me. I don't think indie games will necessarily sell too many Switches, but if you already own one, they're a huge bonus. And I'd recommend having these in your collection since they're relatively cheap to buy and just as good in terms of fun as even some AAA games. But even if simpler indie games aren't your thing, the Switch has plenty to offer for everybody, from platformers to RPGs, open-world adventures, shooters, racing games, non-EA sports games, and even unique silly games. Which is pretty impressive for not having been out a full year at the time of this video. Number 3. Portability. This one gets talked about to death, but it's still one of the coolest things about the Switch. And I'm sure I'll get plenty of threats in the comments for not having this be number 1, but I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. You can play the Switch on your TV, take it with you to pee, or even in the shower. Just don't take it to your neighbor Lonnie's house, cause he will cut and or touch you. Although, I guess he will do that regardless of whether or not you have a Switch. That's our Terry. And another thing people don't really talk about is that buying a Switch game is kinda like a 2-for-1 deal, seeing as how portable and console counterparts have always been sold as 2 separate copies in the past. So whether you look at it as a 2-for-1 or 1.5-for-1 deal, I think it's just dandy. Number 2. The Switch is different. You might not always like Nintendo's unorthodox methods, but at least they're not growing complacent. People like to focus on the times Nintendo's done outright silly things, but failure's not failing if you learn from it and grow, which is exactly what Nintendo's done with the Switch. The Wii U's gamepad wasn't really that cool, but rather than falling in line with Sony and Microsoft for the Switch, N-Dog tweaked the concept a little bit and hit a home run, which was a risky move considering that trying to be different was part of the reason why the Wii U failed. As much as I love my PS4 and respect the Xbox One, those two consoles are like 85% the same thing. It's not a bad idea to get either of them, it's just that there's not many reasons to get both. And there's certainly no room for a third console to do the exact same thing. So in this particular instance, I'm glad Nintendo stuck to their guns. And while I'm glad the Nintendo Switch is so different, I'm also glad that, number 1, the Switch isn't too different. Adjusting the concept of the gamepad wasn't the only thing Nintendo did differently from the Wii U with the Switch. After the Wii and Wii U, most gamers just wanted a traditional controller without any funny business. And Nintendo was able to find a compromise that pretty much pleases everybody with the Switch by not only having innovation, but straight up standard controllers with slight upgrades that I've talked about earlier in the video. As innovative as the Switch is, most of those innovations are optional and almost never forced, save for those shrines in Breath of the Wild where you have to flip your controller around like a poop ass, and being given a clear advantage in Mario Odyssey for using motion controls. But if you want, you can just dock the Switch 100% of the time and use a standard controller if that's what you prefer. There's a few games that specifically utilize motion controls, which can be fun when done right, but there's also tried and true games that'll always be fun, even 1,000 years from now. And I'm glad Nintendo's finally embracing plain-ass gaming as much as they are with trying new things. What do you think, though? Is this pro Nintendo Switch video good enough to change Kim Jong-un's mind? Or do you think he'll still want me executed? Sorry, hold that thought, I'm getting a fax. Oh my god, how did they get this number? Well, I guess I'd better lay low for a while. Anyway, let me know in the comments down below what your favorite things about the Nintendo Switch are, and I'll pin whatever's most entertaining. If you want to help this channel build some street cred, then it'd be really helpful if you'd like and share this video. And if you're not the people version of an above ground pool, then press the subscribe button. My name's Cameron, and I'll see you next time.
So I want to say thank you to your loyalty, thank you for your support.